Time to talk some D3 football. And to start things off, Jimmy, I think this might be our pick. This is probably the best game of the week and one that I don't think literally anyone picked the result correctly.
No, I know. I didn't. I did pick Susquehanna to cover, though, if you remember.
There you go.
Plus
Yes,
13.
you did.
So, but I did pick St. John, so I can't totally playing favorites here. But Rashawn Lamont had an absolute beauty of a game. The freshman, 231 all-purpose yards and 3 touchdowns for the kid. I know we had just had on the show, but wow, what a performance from him, Kobe.
Dude, absolutely ridiculous. And it wasn't just him. This offense, he talks about it in the episode, and he says this is the most explosive offense in D3 football, and it's certainly he's got a claim to that, right? The way these guys have played in a really tough environment against a really solid defensive opponent in St. John's, and for him to come in and have the impact that he's had, dude, it has been sensational, what he's been able to do for this offense.
Yeah, no, it's been absolutely absurd, especially at his age, like you said. But, on the other side as well, our boy Severson with 466 and 5 touchdowns. And Riley Schwellenbach with 167 and 2 touchdowns receiving. So with a lot of explosive offense on the other side as well. But obviously Susquehanna coming out on top.
Yes, they did. And a big note from that one, Jimmy, being the fact that Lamont, he became Susquehanna's single-season rushing leader with 1,453. That is a ridiculous number. And you talk about a guy coming in as a first-year guy, as a freshman in this program, and taking on that responsibility from week 1 when he scored 2 touchdowns in their opener and really just growing in his role from there. It was absolutely fantastic hearing from him and seeing what they've been able to do. And, for the first time this year, Susquehanna did not initiate the scoring. Instead, they had to bounce back. A 10-0 deficit on the road at St. John's is not something many teams can pull off. Susquehanna able to do that. And finally, of course, the walk-off kick. Dude, I'm sure you saw this video of this one.
I saw it.
This video courtesy of d3football.com. Thank you for sharing this on Twitter. Dominic Bourgeois, I believe is the correct pronunciation here. He knocks this one through and gives Susquehanna the victory on the road. And Rashawn said you could just feel the air leave this place, dude. And I certainly believe it. You watch the scene here, the celebration from the Riverhawks. There he is after nailing it. Running around, probably doesn't even know what to do. And these guys get out on the field. Absolutely a ridiculous scene up there in Minnesota.
Yeah, that's awesome. Going on the road, getting a big win in the playoffs. You can't beat that.
No, that's pretty cool stuff right there. But Susquehanna, they keep the dream alive. They'll move on to the next round, and they've played some really good football this year. But another big time matchup: Bethel at Wartburg. Another game that we picked incorrectly. We were struggling on the pick'em last week. Need to redeem ourselves this week. But Bethel goes into Wartburg, Jimmy, 24-14. Royals take this one, and talk about a strong defensive effort and some timely plays here.
Yeah, obviously, forcing 2 interceptions, 9 tackles for loss, and Wartburg also had missed 3 field goals.
Yeah.
Too. So that was just a huge swing. Obviously, you go back, put those points on the board, probably a lot different. But for Bethel, in the quarterfinals for the 6th time in program history, and the 3rd time since 2018. So huge for them. And then a huge touchdown, like right before halftime for Bethel to swing the momentum. And then obviously 245 in the first half and only 45 in the second half. So the offense kind of stalled out. But obviously that Wartburg defense, like we talked about last week, is going to come to play, and they did. Some costly mistakes on offense and some special teams, and keeping them away from the win column this week and giving it to Bethel.
Definitely did, and it certainly felt like you talked about it. 245 in the first half, 45 in the second. This offense was going. Defense, they picked up and held up their end of the bargain in the second half there. And how about 59-yard interception return for Bethel? Extends their lead to 10 in the fourth quarter, stops another drive for the Knights, and kind of started to really swing that momentum back in their favor in that second half. Isaac Call, he seals the deal, another interception at the end of the game, and the Royals are moving on in a pretty unlikely fashion. What a big time win for them to continue their streak. And now you're at the stage of the game where it's like really anyone could beat anybody. All these teams, what we've seen from them in the last couple of rounds, I don't know. Obviously, you kind of have a couple of those underdog type stories. We'll talk about a Mary Hardin-Baylor squad in a second that certainly nobody expected to be in this position, maybe outside of the people in that building. But I don't know if there's many true underdog stories left at this phase of the game. You've seen people take on some of the giants in D3 football.
Yeah, and like you said, not a lot of underdog stories left, but it's cool to see what Mary Hardin-Baylor's done for sure. We know we're about to talk about them.
Yeah, talk about that game, because Mary Hardin-Baylor, man, this game traveling up to Oregon to take on a Linfield squad that was averaging a crap load of points per game. I'll leave it at that. They hold this Linfield team to 18 points. They win 28-18 on the road. You talked about it in kind of our pick'em, their ability to get to the quarterback, and they did that. And they took better care of the football, which is something that I had kind of poked and prodded about earlier. But 28-18 final, from up in Linfield.
Yeah, and Hardin-Baylor was 10-point underdogs going into this game, and I picked them to win outright. So shout out to Mary Hardin-Baylor for getting my pick'em right for me after I went 0 for 2 to start here. But pretty big play early on was Linfield drove down in the opening possession, and they got down into the red zone, and they got held to a field goal. And from there, Mary Hardin-Baylor just took it and ran, going up 21-3. Obviously, a muffed punt was due, helped that case get to 21-3, but huge momentum shift there, fumbling that punt, and then obviously our boy Durand Hill, man, that kid is an absolute stud.
It's like week in and week out with him too.
Yeah.
There's no off weeks with him, and he's just one piece of that Mary Hardin-Baylor defense. I certainly don't want to make it seem like he's a one-man effort on that side of the ball, but he could be. Like, he's one of those guys that has that level of impact on the game. So certainly wanted to highlight that. This is part of the post-game scene from up there in Oregon from the Crusader huddle. So wanted to make sure I showed that and these guys as they some post-game scenes after the victory. But yeah, I mean, just a ridiculous final in my opinion, and a great day, a really great day for this Crew team in general. Asa Osborne, 17 carries on the ground and finished over 100 yards and a touchdown. You had Jake Wright. They didn't do too much through the air. Jimmy, 8 of 19, 116 yards, had a touchdown, 1 interception on the day. Linfield had a pretty good offensive day, all things considered. I mean, you look at, they outgained the Crusaders 358 yards to 289. And they won in some other key metrics. But at the end of the day, there were some other pieces that were really holding them back. 2 interceptions, that was a big part of it. That was one of the things that held them back from winning this game. They won the time possession battle. And inside of the red zone, Linfield was 3 of 3. So when it came to just coming away with points, now not touchdowns, just points in general. So there was a lot going well for Linfield, but it was timely plays in this one for the Crusaders that ended up getting it done and sealing the deal here.
Yep, and like we said, that's kind of our last underdog. I was putting it in quotes because they're not really an underdog because they've been here so many times. But
that's the thing. It's crazy that they're even like talked about in that breadth, a program at this level, right?
Yeah, for sure.
That's kind of what it feels like. But another one that I believe we got royally wrong. Johns Hopkins, they go into DePauw, and this DePauw team, I'm not going to say I've watched them throughout the entire course of the season, but I've certainly tuned into the second half. And you talk about a couple games that stand out, like that Mellon game and into the playoffs and what they've been able to do defensively and what they've been able to do at home. I believe this was only their second home loss in the last multiple years for this DePauw team under their current head coach. Johns Hopkins goes in there. They don't care about any of that. 14-9, Blue Jays take this one final.
Yeah, and really slow start in this one. 4 punts in a row to start the game. But following those 4 punts, the Blue Jays put together an 11-play, 80-yard drive to get the 7-0 lead right away. And then obviously, I want to point out, Johns Hopkins tied the program record for its 12th consecutive road victory. And Johns Hopkins has held 11 of its 12 opponents this season under 10 points.
Ridiculous.
It's absurd.
It is.
Or
It's
under 10 points under its scoring average. Excuse me.
Yeah.
Under its, that's still like a wild stat, especially when you have an explosive offense like DePauw come in here, looking up 9 points on the road. I mean, just absolutely stellar defensive performance from Johns Hopkins.
Blue Jays reaching the 11-win mark for the 6th time in program history. They did it last year. They do it this year. They've done it multiple times this last decade. And really, that defense, they come up with a stop in the final 2 minutes, seal the win. 7 times in 12 games, man. This is a team that is rolling at the right time. We had talked about how maybe their offense wasn't putting up the same numbers as when compared to a year ago, but I don't know if we consider that maybe other parts of this team continued to get better. Some of the stuff, obviously, on the box score might have changed, but the DNA and the core nucleus of this team is very much still the same. And this is a Johns Hopkins team that is proving a lot of people wrong, which, again, after their season last year and being a 1 seed heading into the playoffs is pretty wild to talk about it in that regard. But you look at James Ranello, 24 of 30 on the day. Very efficient, 296 and a touchdown through the air. Didn't have a ton going on the ground for Johns Hopkins, but E.J. Tallarico, hopefully pronouncing that one correctly, and Cole Crotty, 115 and 114 yards apiece for those two on the receiving end for this Johns Hopkins offense. And when it came to the defense, Jimmy, my goodness, 5 different guys registering sacks on the day, and I had 2 interceptions, of course. Carson Bordeaux, one of the guys we had on the show just a little while ago, took one and brought it back 20 yards on the return, had almost 7 different Blue Jays in the backfield registering tackles for loss. I mean, this was just an across-the-board really good defensive effort for this Johns Hopkins squad, and they're going to need that to continue on this kind of run that they're on right now. But a team that ruined a very impressive run, and one that, thankfully, I actually did predict correct because I didn't get much right in our pick'em this week. Let's talk about Springfield. They go into upstate New York. They dethrone the defending national champions in Cortland. They do it behind that potent offense in the option, and it really was kind of what you'd expect from the Springfield team. But the fact is they did it against a really quality opponent in Springfield, and they broke a pretty wild record in the process.
Yeah, our boy Arson leading the way for Springfield. 29 carries, 148, and 2 touchdowns. Blaine Hart had a good game as well. 10 for 87 and 2 touchdowns. And Drew Heenan with 11 for 87 and 2 touchdowns as well. This is probably the craziest stat I saw all week, potentially. Jack Winey with 22 tackles for Cortland.
I just read that on there, and I'm literally going to double check that right now because
it's on there. Go look.
Holy shit, it is, and that is outrageous.
22 tackles. I was going through because I always go through like a box score, like all this. It's usually like rushing yards or receiving yards, like it's been like all day today. But I got to throw in a defensive stat there. 22 freaking tackles.
That's outrageous. Also at a sack and a forced fumble.
Yeah, I mean, just monster performance for him. Absolutely monster performance.
That is really, really impressive. And that record that I had alluded to earlier, Springfield football, they set the new NCAA Division III record for yards in a season, 5,327 yards on the year for this Pride attack. We saw Harding do it at the D2 level last year, running the flex ball and the option. We see Springfield do it this year at the D3 level. And boy, option football is back, Jimmy. I think it may be back to stay, especially at a couple of these programs. That's only the start of it, though. You look at the second slide of this tweet. They had 8 players rush for over 100 yards this season. You go down the list. Arson, of course, leading the charge there. You talked about Blaine Hart earlier, but continue going down that list. There were so many contributors to this offensive attack for the Springfield team, and they've shown up in really big ways throughout this playoff run. And Arson is obviously the face of that potent offensive attack, but there's a lot of other guys that make this thing go over there for Springfield.
The offensive line. I was about to say the O-line.
That as well, right? I mean, you talk about having 8 guys go for over 100 yards. How about the dudes that make the holes for that? Because that literally is a testament to, like, not to discriminate against these guys, but, like, whoever they throw back there, they're getting yards because these guys are moving bodies up front.
Yeah, absolutely. And the game's won up front. You know, the offensive line is the most important part of the offense. So
that it definitely is. And moving over now, the team that, maybe we didn't talk about too much over the course of the regular season. That was because they were blowing teams out by ridiculous margins, and there were a lot of other really competitive games that maybe we just wanted to cover instead of this. Well, no more excuses, Jimmy. Hope, they go into North Central, and the Cardinals, they take this one 41-21 in admittedly a little bit more of a dominant fashion than I was expecting. This Hope defense, I think, was kind of the talk of this. Oh, North Central isn't going to be able to do this against this Hope defense. Not the fact that Hope was going to go in there and upset them. We both picked the Cardinals to win this one outright and probably to cover. But the fact that they're able to put 41 up on this Hope defense that has shown that they are a really prominent side of the football there for the Flying Dutchman. And, just talk to me about this one.
So, interesting. It was actually no score in the first quarter, 0-0.
Yeah.
Tied 7-7 late in the second quarter, and then the final 3:26 of the first half, North Central scored twice.
Unreal.
So, and we talk about the middle eight all the time on this show, and it showed tremendously on Saturday for North Central. You can do some damage in that middle eight, you can shift the whole entire game, and that's what we saw. Outgaining Hope 486 to 334 in this one. So a lot more second half kind of obviously they took off, like we said. Landon going for 93, and he threw to Skanka 4 times for 119. So Skanka had himself a nice little game. Sacco breaking the 100-yard barrier, 100-yard rushing yards. gaining 120 on 19 carries, past the 1,000-yard barrier for the second straight season. So he had himself a nice game, getting some milestones as well. So
how about picking off Ben Wellman twice for that Cards defense? Maybe hasn't gotten enough love over the course of this season. North Central, they did that in this one. Jamar Daniel and Robbie Ramarion, and those are two big-time plays that Hope is not getting back in this one. And there were some guys on that side of the ball that had good days, but the 2 interceptions for Hope certainly put out a couple of their drives prematurely. And this one started to get away from Hope in the fourth quarter. There was a touchdown at the very end. I'm talking 15 seconds left in the game that made the score look even a little bit closer than it actually was. This was a 41-14 game, Jimmy. This was very far out of reach. And this is really what we've come to expect from this squad. One number that did stand out to me here, the attendance being only 1,491 people.
Yeah, I think the weather was pretty bad at Hope. I know that I saw some videos of them like shoveling the field and everything. So maybe it had to do with the weather. I'm not
at
really
North
sure.
Central in Naperville.
Oh, I thought it was. Excuse me, I thought it was at Hope. I've been seeing videos of them shoveling the field all week. Maybe it was just for practice.
It definitely was. And Hope did have a ton of snow on the field leading up to it. But this one was in Naperville. So that number, I was like, I was kind of surprised. I don't know what their usual turnout is.
Yeah, it's weird.
But get some people to show up to these games, man.
Yeah.
But absolutely, they are competing at a very good clip. Let's move on. Randolph-Macon, they went on the road to Salisbury. 35-14 Seagulls. They win this one. Jumped out to a 28-0 lead early. Oh, my goodness, Jimmy.
Yeah, this one got out of hand pretty quickly. And that's to their strong run game at 6.7 yards a carry. They only completed 5 passes. Haven't had a super strong passing attack all year because they lean on that run game, obviously. And they only had 1 penalty all game. So, obviously, playing really disciplined football. But they did turn over the ball twice. And Randolph-Macon did not turn the ball over. So, just kind of strange how that all panned out. You win by 21. You lose the turnover battle. Like, it's just weird. But obviously, coming out with the victory.
Yeah, absolutely. We had talked about, the rushing defense for Randolph-Macon, who was only allowing, I believe, 70 or less yards per game on the ground when it came into this one. Randolph-Macon did not run the ball almost at all in this one, at least not effectively. 31 carries for 14 yards, this Randolph-Macon offense. That is ridiculous. Yeah, that's kind of the face I was expecting. Salisbury on the other side of things, 287 yards on the ground with just 12 more carries. They averaged almost 7 a pop. That hurts.
Yeah.
It definitely hurts. 8 sacks for that Salisbury defense. Did you know about that one?
I did. I did not throw it in the graphic, though. That Salisbury run game is just absurd, dude.
It absolutely is.
6.7 yards a carry is just wild.
And then obviously you get Randolph-Macon, you stuff the run, you get them off schedule, and you get back there and get pressure to the quarterback. That's a recipe for disaster if you're those guys. But final game to cover here, Carnegie Mellon, they go on the road to Mount Union. Purple Raiders take this one, not very handily, 24-19. They come out on top.
Yeah, they had a heck of a game. Wild one here. I did not really expect it to be this close. I said that last week, and I was proven dead wrong, obviously.
Yep.
I thought this was like the one I thought they were going to cover for sure, but they obviously did not manage to do that. PJ DeShields had a pretty solid game for Mount Union. Joey McGinnis had himself a solid game for Carnegie Mellon as well. The Mount Union defense coming up big late, getting some big stops and coming out on top. I will say Mount Union has had some kind of scary games throughout the regular season, and this one obviously not being a great game. You thought this might be like a tune-up game, if you will. I mean, I don't want to go as far as saying that, but I expected some more out of them. I don't know. What about you? What do you think about that?
I hear you. I think this Carnegie team, traveled very well and had a lot to prove going into this, right? I think that was a big piece of it for this Carnegie squad. But I guess I'm kind of in that same regard, and recency bias could certainly be a part of that because we saw the way they handled John Carroll last week.
Exactly.
And maybe we just, subliminally we were expecting something of that similar nature. And again, to our point earlier on, you don't just handle teams like that in the playoffs. That game against John Carroll was an anomaly for a reason because those don't happen in the playoffs, right? Those games are not supposed to exist at this time of the football season. So to see a score like this, yeah, I'm with you, and I thought this game maybe had a little bit larger margin of victory for the Purple Raiders, but they took care of business, and I'm sure the guys in that building could care less what the score is now moving forward.
Yeah, Yeah, I just got to keep feeding Echeverry, like we said last week. Keep giving the ball to Echeverry.
Yeah, you did. You did. You said feed them, and good things will come when you do that.
Yeah, no, for sure.
I mean, you look ahead at this matchup, though. These guys playing Salisbury in a week, and that's where I think things are going to get very interesting. Mount Union's run defense has not been the focal point, I think, this season. They're allowing about 100 per game, and only 3 a pop, but they haven't played a team like Salisbury. They haven't played a team with that style and that energy and that physicality, I think, when you can talk about this Seagull offense. And so when you're already giving up, you're conceding 100 yards a game there, and now with the fact that you're playing one of the most potent, if not one of the best rushing attack in D3 football, that could spell trouble for Mount Union early. We'll see how they handle that. I think the first quarter of that one will be very telling.
Yeah, we'll see. We'll have to see.
Yeah, and we'll do a pick 'em probably tomorrow. I mean, we'll be filming it probably as you're watching this.